Guys, welcome to Thoughts Universe, where we teach the truth and show the guiding principles of the universe. I am Promise, and today we will talk about elements. According to modern science, an element is a pure chemical substance consisting of an atom, and this atom is defined by its atomic number. An element is the basic building block and the underlying material of which all things are made up of. And the combined discipline of chemistry, physics, astrophysics, and others agree that the universe is made up of elements. Hydrogen, being the simplest and the most abundant chemical element in the universe, occupies about 75% of it, and helium occupies 24%, and then other elements are combined into the remaining 1%. Some example of chemical elements include hydrogen, helium, like mentioned above, carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, oxygen, and these elements make up the vast majority of all living matter on Earth connected by an atom. This means literally everything in the physical realm, living or non-living, is made up of ordinary matter and elements. And so is the cosmic or the spiritual plane. In the universe, there are about 118 known chemical elements, and quantum physics fully accepts, supports, and also explains why they exist. Also, across the discipline of quantum physics, cosmic and ancient knowledge, esoteric tradition, and Hermetism are related studying, which, when put together and compounded, shows evidence of how the universe works and operates. Now, ancient societies and even the early men for thousands of years before modern science studied the heavens, tracked the stars, and used them to navigate living, thereby evolving their practical and spiritual needs. And in time, astrology became the word and the discipline through which ancient societies studied this for thousands of years. As man and its societies evolved, this study or discipline, astrology, also evolved, or will I say devolved? Or we can say that man evolved materially and evolved spiritually. But yes, over thousands of years, astrology got broken down into astrology and astronomy as the realm went from understanding, revering, and honoring the spiritual to a more physical and material based world. And astrology and astronomy were separated in order to use logical and physical representation to understand the universe and the divine. Well, in my experience, let me make this clear: you cannot understand the divine using logic on a lower consciousness. And even when the heavens were studied in ancient times and before astrology, it wasn't done by the general public and masses, but by the medicine man, the priests, the shaman, the mages, the sages, and the spiritually gifted of these ancient societies. And in time, later on became education for the elites and the children of royal descent, not the farming and hunting masses. Somewhat similar to what we see in today's societies, where not everyone can access basic education. So astrology got broken down into astrology and astronomy, as astronomy studies the physical evidence of the observable and known universe. And as you will find out in some of our previous topics, astrology and the celestial bodies as the foundation of creation, descendants of the stars, one, two, three, who and you and what is your identity. Astronomy proves that we are made of star stuff, that is elements. Our stars are also made up of elements. Putting these topics together can help you have a better understanding of elements. And on a larger scale, all thoughts universe topic as nothing happens in isolation, nothing happens as a coincidence in the universe, and it's all connected. Back to star stuff. So elements make up stars, and stars are made up of elements. Hence, we are made of star stuff. This quote originates from astronomer Carl Sagan in his 1980 TV series Cosmos. And I quote: "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself." Similar poetic concepts were later shared by physicists Lawrence Krauss and astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, before these older and more civilized societies that studied astrologer, as the case may be, were the hunter-gathering societies, the indigenous and ancient tribal societies, who, through their own way, understood the cosmic and the spiritual elements through the eyes of the shaman, the medicine man, the healer, the indigenous tribal priest, the spiritually gifted, and they had a practical and visible understanding of the universe and its elements: fire, water, air, earth, and one more, which modern science does not accept or admit, and that is spirit or ether. These are universal elements which the Dibia, the tribal priests, the shaman, the spiritually gifted understood the inherent nature and the symbolic principle of as well. In ancient and primitive times. There were no modern or other technological equipment currently being used to understand modern science, chemical equations and elements, but fire, water, air, and earth has existed for thousands of years, far back into the primitive times, and has helped and aided man in its evolution for over millions of years. So before modern science, this cosmic, universal, or spiritual element existed with its base form as spirits or ether, and this was the way by which the spiritually gifted understood these elements. Let's not forget, modern science also supports the breakdown of these universal elements into chemical elements. And as we can see in the Avatar series, the Avatar was the bridge between the spiritual and the physical world and had to master the other elements in order to save the day. But he was only able to do that after remembering who he was and connecting to the Avatar ancestry. So, yes, the Dibia, the high priest, the shaman, the medicine man, the healer, the medium, the seer, the mystic had an understanding of the in-depth nature of this element beyond the physical, what you can see, the divine nature of the realm, and led the people as they understood the realm and had visions of things to come. Before, well, due to the hierophantic nature of their practice, which need them to take a lot of their time in studying and receiving knowledge from the divine in order to share it with the public. The dibia, the shaman, or the high priest understood that to live a balanced life in the human body and the denser plane, one must master these four elements and alchemize them in fusion with the spirits and soul. Let's begin with the elements. Water. Water is made up of two chemical elements, hydrogen and oxygen. And the oldest physical form of liquid water on Earth comes from a 4.3 to 4.4 billion years zircon crystal found in Western Australia, which contain oxygen isotope clues, indicating a cool enough surface for liquid water. Well, let's not forget water can take other forms as well. Water is a profound element that makes up a tiny fraction of the universe. That is about 0.01%. Although its building blocks, hydrogen and oxygen, are common elements, and the adult human body is made up of approximately 60% water. Water exists in various forms, as ice in space, mostly as ice grains in cold gas clouds, that is molecular clouds in between stars, as vapor clouds with huge reservoir of water vapor around black holes and galaxies. And water in its non-liquid form covers approximately 71% of the Earth's surface. So the dibia, the shaman, the medicine man, and the indigenous tribal priest. Water holds a significant meaning and power because of the inherent quality it possesses and portrays. Water is the breath of life, as it is the element by which every living active organism survives. Water also envelops and inhabits spaces without losing itself, as it causes inability for separation, seeps through the deepest cracks and crevices, erases the identity of separation, and so erases the illusion of a boundary. Water is a portal, a realm, and also rules the emotional space. And that's why we say Emotions that moves and flows is wisdom, and emotions that stays is weight, which you can see with a flowing water and a stagnant water. Of course, you can tell the difference between both. When your energy in motion, that is, your emotion, flows like water, they heal, rejuvenate, and always bring about a fresh perspective in flow. When your emotion stays and is not faced and felt, it doesn't flow or becomes stagnant and creates density and an unregulated nervous system. Water is conscious and holds memory. It helps with focusing and grounding and is a major necessity on earth. Yet, between 80% to 95% of Earth's ocean water and deep sea remains completely unexplored. The Dibia, the shaman, the spiritually gifted, knew that water holds a high frequency and that water responds to your thoughts, emotions, and words. Therefore, they spoke and blessed the water, which is something you can also do as well. Before you bathe, before you drink the water, you can say one or two words for it. The water holds memory and it remembers. Air. Air is made up of nitrogen, oxygen, and argon, which combined together makes up 99% of the atmosphere on Earth. The oldest direct chemical evidence of Earth's early air comes from a 4 billion year old ancient rock samples analyzed by scientists studying gas bubbles and mineral oxidation states. Air is a mysterious agent and a part of all we are. It is not just chemical elements, as it in itself is a substance so real and impossible to estimate. Air is a tremendous field of magnetic energy, and our atmosphere carries the magnetism of the sun. And you can clearly understand this by understanding the season. That's the rainy or dry season in Africa, the winter, spring, summer, as all this happening at the same time, yearly or seasonally, is as a result of the magnetic factor in the air. The Dibia, the shaman, the tribal priest, and the spiritually gifted understood air in a spiritual form, the importance of this spiritual substance to the human body, that the lack of it, the absence of it, or the removal of it is death. Yes, if air fails, we die. Not just us, plants, animals, and all living organisms. It will be very disastrous if such a thing ever happens. The Dibia, the spiritually gifted, understood that air moves energy and is the medium through which everything communicates and interacts as a spiritual element that it is. Fire. Fire has been a huge part of the human story and has aided in its evolution. And the earliest evidence that humans, the ancestors, used fire and that is controlled fire can be dated back to over a million years ago. This can be found in Wonderwed Cave in South Africa, where archaeologists found microscopic ash, burned animal bones, and burned plant remains. And these were all found deep inside the cave. Fire itself cannot be broken down into chemical elements. It is a process of combustion that involves hot gases, light, heat, and ionized particles, or plasma as it is commonly called. And these are made up of elements or materials that include heat, oxygen, and fuel. To the Dibia, the shaman, and the spiritually gifted, fire represents transformation, purification, and divine presence. It symbolizes the burning away of illusion, the energy of creation, and the zealous power of the spirits. Fire was also seen to penetrate and consume things, and also a source of heat, energy, sunlight, metabolism, and combustion. To the spiritually gifted, fire also signified willpower, the soul's blazing willpower. And of course, it is fire, it raises down anything in its way. And so, if your willpower to quench a fire doesn't supersede that fire, well, we all know how that eventually goes. Everything gets burned down. And being on fire as well without grounding can also burn you up. Earth. Current scientific understanding of the formation of Earth has us believing that Earth formed about 4.54 billion years ago from the same cloud of gas and dust that formed the Sun and the celestial bodies, that is the solar nebula.
And due to gravity and density, the Earth got separated from the universe and into this lower and denser plane as a physical manifestation of the higher plane. The Earth is also made up of certain similar elements that you can trace back to the universal elements of which everything is made up, and certainly similar elements as the stars, and of course humans. Dust we come and unto dust we shall return. I cannot remember exactly where I heard that from, but this relates to the ancestral way of sending the soul across. As in ancient times, the body was committed to the earth. This was before the general use of caskets. I am curious, when you bury a body and you leave it for such a long time before unearthing it, you end up seeing just the skeleton, not the body, and well, probably it's returned to dust. Earth is the physical foundation of life and the densest level of manifestation, where energy or spirit manifests itself through matter. And you know, when we are talking about matter, that is ordinary matter, we are talking about the physical. To the Dibia, the shaman, the tribal priests, the spiritually gifted, Earth represents the divine maternal energy and the material manifestation of deep, enduring resilience. It embodies maternal qualities of fertility, birth, unconditional support, and the continuous cycle of life, as well as its renewal. There's a reason why she's called the mother. The ancestors, the ancient ones, the indigenous tribal people viewed the soil, the stones, and the ecosystem as living entities possessing their own spiritual essence and memory. Earth brings abundance, wealth, harvest, provision, security, all of which are a physical manifestation of one's hard work. Now, finally, we have spirits or ether. I believe most people are not aware of this as an element, as most times it is not mentioned among the other four. Modern science does not support it. Most people or humans in general do not believe in spirits or the divine. Quantum physics also does not support it outrightly. Yet, the quantum field theory shows that empty space is not completely empty and contains 0 point energy and virtual particle fluctuations that is similar to the ether. Yet, the spiritually gifted, the healers, the shamans, the dibia, the medicine man had an idea of spirit or what is represented as ether, as they were the only one conscious or aware enough to perceive beyond the physical realm and elements. Everything in the world is created of electromagnetic waves of an electromagnetic field, ether or spirits by vibration. And sine waves are the vibration that creates all physical evidence of this. As we all know, the physical is a manifestation of the spiritual. The ether is a medium that fills all space and allows light, magnetism, electricity, and in fact everything travel through it. We can relate this to the 0 point energy of space or the universe according to quantum physics. And well, on the spiritual plane, it's all spiritual, even the physical manifestation. In the 19th century, many physicists reasoned that light, which behave as waves, must have a medium. They proposed an invisible substance filling all of space called the luminiferous ether. Although experiments, especially that of Michelson-Morley in 1887, failed to detect any ether. And later on, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity in 1905 showed same and believed that light does not require a material medium to travel. Albert Einstein did not disregard the luminiferous ether or the concept of it, but explicitly stated that a material medium is not required. Well, who knows? Maybe an immaterial medium, something beyond the material, the physical, spirit, ether. That's for you to answer. Well, science isn't studied in ether or spirit due to indoctrination, evolution of the material, and devolution of the spiritual that has happened for over hundreds of years. And I'm pretty sure old Albert was not spiritually gifted. Still, shaman, medicine man, or healer to understand the science of spirits or the spirits of science. Interestingly, later on in life, Albert Einstein famously spoke and wrote about the ether. In his famous address at the University of Leiden on May 5th, 1920, during an address, he is famously quoted to have said, "According to the general theory of relativity, space is endowed with physical qualities. In this sense, therefore, there exists an ether." Well, someone finally saw what the spirit men and spiritually gifted understood. This was after arguing against the luminiferous ether and discarding it as completely unnecessary in his 1905 work. He redefined the word ether as an active fabric beyond space and time, and stressed that it had no substance and no mechanical state of motion. Be it an electromagnetic field, ether, gravitational field, the 0 point of quantum physics, or the spirit realm. There is an established reality of whatever substance it is called. Then again, who are the best to know about this world and realm in its depths than the ancestors, the ancient ones, who evolved and made a living without modern science, modern ways of living, or earlier ones, capitalism, or living in debt, understood and navigated this world and realm, and it evolved through them, steering the wheel to whatever it is we all, that is, the system, has made of it, with deliberate systemic indoctrinations that created hell in a materialistic society which feels it is more evolved but has lost its sense of spiritual perception and awareness, and so devolved into what it is today. I do know that when we begin perceiving and understanding sciences through the view of the spirits or ethers and understanding the realm better, then will we have a better understanding of who we are and return to being a great race as humans, as we will be led by the spirits and now truly evolve in truth and oneness with the universe. Since science isn't studied in ethers or spirits, due to our collective lack of perception in truth and indoctrination, in time, we can and we will, when truth and love leads alongside a raised and higher consciousness, back to ether. The ancestors and ancient words, I am sure, could not fathom such a word then, but understood and experienced the construct of it as spirits. And most, if not all, cultures, tribes, civilizations, indoctrinated religion have some sort of evolution and beginning of mankind as a spiritual or divine phenomenon or something beyond what they can explain. Most people do not dispute the controlled concept of the divine and the spiritual through systemic religion, and so are those who do not dispute the controlled modern science origin of mankind and creation, even though science does not explicitly give details of the creation, what happened before the Big Bang, or how the Big Bang came about. Well, it is what it is, as I can understand generations and years of indoctrination. From our ancestors, I believe we can learn that no true evolution happens without the spiritual, as the spiritual, through its gifted ones, led with vision, truth, and purpose. And every society that does not put the spiritual at the forefront happens to eventually collapse time and time again. Lots of religious stories confirm this, and well, even the physical world we see today. And spirituality in truth, not systemic indoctrination. You should know that traditional and indigenous spiritualities are usually lived spiritual systems, experienced and embodied. I'm not so sure I should use the word embodied, as it sometimes sounds as performance, but I mean, it's the life you now live as you have stepped into the unknown and seen the truth and beyond the illusion. And then you act from there depending on your soul purpose. When you remember something encoded in your soul's blueprint. I don't think everyone has a spiritual calling, especially those indoctrinated religious heads. But I know everyone has a purpose, which you eventually remember. But yeah, does religion work? Sometimes, yes. Mostly because they believe and it aligns with the tools of creation. Is it true or rooted in truth? No, it isn't, as they are a part of this curated systemic manipulation that has aided in suffering and diminishing of the people's power, as they have forgotten who they are and giving away. Like, come on, Descendants of the stars should not be suffering. I think I have gotten a name for you all. Descendants of the stars. From now on, it's no longer be hey guys, to be hey descendants of the stars. Seems a bit long, but we'll manage. But yeah, back to spiritual system. The traditional, cultural, and indigenous spiritual system of the Dibias, the shamans, the healers, the medicine men, the mediums, the seers, the witches, and the spiritually gifted was developed into a formal branch of metaphysics in ancient Greek civilization. It was marked in ancient Egypt, that is Kemet, divine order and creation myths in Mesopotamia, Brahman, Atman, and Kama in the Indus Valley, that later evolved into Indian tradition and civilizations. Tao, Yin, and the balance of reality in ancient China, and various sophisticated understanding of the spirit, ancestors, nature, and cosmic order without the use of the word metaphysics in Africa, Australia, the Americas, and Oceania. This covers all and every single human, descendants of the stars, sharing similar elements to the stars, having the DNA of the stars, I dare say, and yet spiritually enslaved until you realize yourself and remember who you are. In the whole universe, according to scientists, what is conceivable is just 5% and is made of ordinary matter, that is atoms. And then dark matter is made of about 27%. Now, scientists know dark matter exists because of its gravitational effects, but its exact nature isn't known and cannot be seen. So maybe a part of the unseen, the astral, the cosmic, the spiritual, that's for you to answer. There is also about 68% of dark energy that helps in expanding the universe. So, ordinary matter, the physical, plants, animal, trees, and people make up just 5% of the universe. It is interesting because this ordinary matter shares or can trace the same elements to the chemical elements in the universe, same as humans. And so, what are we saying? What are we doing? How did we forget our roots, our ancestry? Before modern science and chemistry, the ancient ones believed that what was collectively perceived as reality had both a visible and invisible dimension. And these common ideas of the spiritual realm was known by the spiritually gifted of the indigenous tribe all over the world. So yes, only the shamans and the spiritually gifted could see beyond the physical and what was known by everyone. The spirit realm was generally thought to be beyond ordinary human senses and the physical, the world of ancestors, spirits, and the invisible life force, accessible through visions, dreams, rituals, liminal spaces, meditation, divination, and so on. Their understanding of the classical universal elements helped the ancient ones in navigating life and evolving before the development of chemical elements. And these four classical universal elements, proposed about 450 years before the Common Era or Christ era, laid the foundation for contemporary alchemy and modern chemistry. Fast forward to 1789, that is 2,239 years apart, Antoine Lavoisier, hopefully I did not murder the French, recognized what Henry Cavendish first identified as inflammable air in 1766 and published a list of 33 chemical elements. These were the first ever published chemical elements before the scientific revolution in the 1600s, and this marked the beginning of modern science. Then, in 1661, Robert Boyle published The Skeptical Chemist and argued that elements should be defined experimentally rather than by ancient philosophy. And fast forward, defined elements and helped establish chemistry as a quantitative science. So, chemical elements developed and evolved in concepts from the universal classical elements in the ancient times to 118 recognized chemical elements by present day scientists. And while the universal classical elements is reckoned with and speaks to the higher nature of consciousness and our higher consciousness. The 118 chemical elements speaks to the nature of the physical, the material, and the lower consciousness. But still, both are at its core offshoots of the same elements the universe is made up of: the celestial bodies, the stars, and so on. And don't forget, we are made of star stuff. Genealogy studies the account of origins, descent, and relationships through time, and other things like languages, cultures, religions, and so on. As genealogy aims to understand the origin of a people, things, etc., and how it became currently what it is. Scientists generally do not speak of a family tree of the earth, but do describe its origin and development, and easily links them to the universe, the formation of stars, and the evolution of life. This is one of the reasons why you can easily trace back your ancestry, especially for those with mixed heritage and cultures. Genealogy also shows that form changes, while the core could take another shape but still retain its inherent characteristics. You can see the genealogy of gas to water, and water to ice, depending on the environment and other factors. And genealogy is identified through relating elements. And modern science and chemistry proves a relation of chemical elements with the universal elements, that is hydrogen and helium, from the ancient times that helped in evolving, navigating life, as the universal elements are a way for you to connect your body to your soul, centering the infinity in a limited experience, the cosmic and the spiritual in the physical, as above, so below. If you enjoyed today's topic, like, share, and subscribe to Thought Universe to learn more teachings of the universe. I also have my book here, Spirit Lead, A Guide to Raise Your Consciousness. It is a book that helped me on my journey of feeling, healing, integrating, and being. And I believe it will also help you on yours.